Welcome back. Before we get started writing prompts, we have to choose where we're going to prompt. And not all AI tools are created equal. And for HR, legal, and IT, the environment matters as much as the words that you use. And you might be asking yourself, well, why is that the case? To answer that question, let's look at the differences between enterprise AI platforms and consumer tools. On the enterprise AI side, we're talking about Google Workspace, which uses the Gemini model, and we also have Microsoft 365, which uses Copilot. And on the consumer side, we would have ChatGPT, Grok, and Claude from Anthropic. And while these tools on this side really make a concerted effort to offer business tools, like ChatGPT offers different types of accounts, even enterprise accounts, they don't have any workspace applications like Microsoft has 365 and Google has Workspace. And instead, they offer connectors. And truth be told, these connectors are not nearly as safe as using enterprise AI that already contain their own workspace application. For example, if your organization uses Google, then that means that they have Calendar, Docs, Drive, Google Meet. I mean, I can go on and on and on. There are extensive tools that the whole organization can use. And then you can just add Gemini to the mix. And what's important there is that, number one, the model has access to all of the tools inside of that ecosystem in Workspace, and there's a system administrator ensuring compliance. The same thing with Microsoft. All of the different tools like PowerPoint, Teams, Outlook, all of those Microsoft tools are also connected to some kind of an AI, in this case, Copilot, and there's a system administrator also ensuring compliance. However, when you're using ChatGPT, Grok, or Claude, and each one of them has a specific use case and advantage, but they do not have their own workspace tools and offer connectors. So the difficulty there is, well, who's responsible for compliance in that case? Well, it would have to be someone that is managing the workspace applications and the enterprise consumer applications, meaning Grok or Claude or ChatGPT. The takeaway is this. If your organization uses Google Workspace, then you'll probably use Gemini. However, if your organization is using Microsoft, then you're probably going to use Copilot. There are rare cases where your organization would want you to use Google Workspace and ChatGPT for some reason. In that case, your organization would be responsible for managing compliance on both Google Workspace and the enterprise version of the consumer application, which makes it a little trickier, and the connectors are not as safe as an enterprise workspace with their own proprietary model. And that is super important when you're considering compliance, privacy, and copyright. So let's talk about different points. Let's talk about data security, and we'll compare enterprise AI to consumer tools. So when we're thinking of data security, an enterprise AI, it runs inside of your company's identity and access controls, the same protections as Gmail or SharePoint. Now, when you're thinking about consumer tools, you're going to use external servers, and the data leaves your org boundaries. And when we're talking about data security, that also includes training. So most of these enterprise AI applications will not use your data for training, while the consumer tools might use your data for training, especially the free accounts. And they may store your data indefinitely, which is the case for ChatGPT, unless you're using a business or enterprise account. And when we're talking about compliance, it's much easier when you're working with enterprise AI because there's enterprise agreements. And consumer terms of service are normally weaker legal protections for employee and client data, and they're not as efficient, meaning you have to copy between the tools, which increases the risk of data loss or leaks. However, when you're working with enterprise, it's more efficient because you're going to use Docs, Sheets, or if you're using Microsoft Outlook, Teams, there's no copying and pasting, and that's really a main distinction between these two approaches. So if you work with employee data, contracts, or access logs, Gemini or Copilot keeps that information inside of your organization's boundaries. Using connectors, when you're looking at these consumer tools, like ChatGPT connected to Google Drive or Microsoft 365, that may look convenient, but it's actually a security vulnerability. It moves your data through third-party pipelines that you do not control. Now let's take a look at Google Gemini. And here we have an FAQ section, how Gemini app's activity works. And here it says, who can manage my data? Your workspace account and its data is owned and controlled by your organization, and your workspace admin manages data retention policies for your workspace account, including your conversation history with Gemini. That means that anything that you enter here for your organization, as you can see here, there's a CBT Nuggets logo and it says Pro. This is my work account. I can't delete my conversations. They own the data. They can look at that data, and this is for the organization. And the same goes for Microsoft 365 Copilot. As you can see here, this is an enterprise data protection badge. This means that this is an enterprise account. And if we go to apps, you can see here that we have Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, OneDrive, and many more. You can use all of the Microsoft apps. And the same applies to Google Gemini. If you click on this, you can click on Add from Drive or work directly in any workspace application and have access to Gemini. And when you're looking at something like Grok, this is really tied to social media, to X. So XAI created Grok, but they're also connected to the social media app. So they have access to a large amount of real-time data. So there might be reasons why you might want to use this model, because it has certain advantages with that real-time data. They don't really offer enterprise accounts in the same way as Google and Microsoft. Let me show you what I mean. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So here it says, this page is designed to address questions from business and enterprise customers using the XAI API. So there is an advantage to using the API. This allows computers to communicate directly. So you can create specialized applications at the enterprise level, but that is for the development department. And it's not necessarily enterprise in the sense that you have work applications like Google or Microsoft. And when you look at Claude from Anthropic, you see that you can turn analysis into spreadsheets and ideas into presentations and research into reports. But here you have to allow limited network access, or you can turn that off. And if you go to settings, you can manage some of your data, but this is a personal account and not an enterprise account. Your organization would have to set this up and manage the compliance. And if you go to connectors, you can connect Google Drive, Gmail, Google Calendar, GitHub, and so on. And while you can also add custom connectors, this does not stay behind your organization's identity boundary. And it moves your data through third-party pipelines that you don't control. And the same thing here with ChatGPT. If you click on this, you can add sources. And here you have Gmail, Google, Dropbox, and even more connector options. But again, this is outside of your enterprise or your organization's identity boundary. And to use AI responsibly, you need to ask yourself one question. What kind of information am I handling? Most organizations classify data into 4 levels. Think of this as your universal template. Your company might rename them, but the logic is still the same. First one is public, then it's internal, then you have confidential, and then restricted. When we're looking at public, this is safe for everyone to see. These could be job posting, published policies, maybe even help desk FAQs. And when we're talking about internal, this is for employees only. Internal memos, training guides. And if you go to confidential, this is sensitive business or personal information. This could be employee evaluation, draft contracts, maybe network maps. And finally, we have restricted, highly sensitive or limited access, like payroll data, legal investigations, encryption keys, and so on. When you start prompting, your first mental step should be, what kind of classification is this? Is it public? Is it internal? Is it confidential? Or is it restricted? If it's confidential or restricted, you never paste that into a public tool. Gemini and Copilot are designed for internal and confidential use because they stay inside of the enterprise perimeter. But you should always check with your organization and review their policies to make sure that the admin is handling compliance for confidential and restricted information. All right, so now that we've covered classification and the differences between enterprise applications with workspaces and enterprise or business accounts with ChatGPT, Grok, Claude, and other models, it's time to start writing some prompts, and I'll see you in that next video.